Welcome to Fusing the Unfusible. Today we have a special guest, Jamil Abu Wardeh, and I'm going to read his bio in the first person. I am not a rocket scientist, but I have worked with some. I have experience in launching, managing, and growing business, technology, and media globally. I have a flair for storytelling. I'm a crypto nut and a Web3 enthusiast. I believe in the power of content as a driver for marketing and sales goals. In my career in the UK and Dubai, I've had the privilege of working with elite people and entities including Google, Dubai government, and BCG. And those rocket scientists, well, we helped them create an educational YouTube series. They ended up going to Mars. Welcome to the show, Jamil, and thank you for joining us today on Fusing the Unfusible.
Man, thank you, Karim. It's great to see that you're doing this.
It's been a while since we talked and we met, and I'm really happy to see you again, and I feel like we have so much to catch up on. Trying to avoid as much as possible talking about, the investment part. We're not investment advisors. We're not really here to talk about, but I love your t-shirt and the fact that it says hodl in Arabic. I love it. I love it. We're hodlers,
Hodl,
right?
Yes, absolutely.
We're hodlers. And we can talk about whatever you want, but let's start. What's your candid, honest view on the Web3 space right now? What have you seen? I haven't seen you in a couple of years. We haven't talked. There have been many startups, many projects shut down, started up again. What's your view?
I'll start with the t-shirt because I think this is one of the key, you just mentioned, I mentioned content, but basically communication. Everything starts with explaining new things to people. I think we're going through an incredible change right now. People talk about the change of the internet, and now you have AI. And of course, there's this whole world that we're talking about, which is how money is going to change or how people are going to exchange value in a new way. One of the biggest problems with all of this is people don't like change. And one of the key things is all the new words that everybody uses. So we grow up, and everybody still grows up not knowing or being taught anything about money. Yes, you said we're not financial advisors, but most people don't know. They think they know some stuff about money, but it is actually so simple if you go back to first principles. And what loses them very quickly is the language and the new words that are being used around new technology. So my big thing now is to kind of decipher, I would say, these concepts and help people in general. Whenever you're in an industry, there's change. And I just try to work with people on knowing that new things aren't bad necessarily, but to actually navigate what is bad from what is good. So I think, again, why I say the t-shirt, hodl. Hodl is a word that was a mistake that somebody tweeted, and it just means hold, but it's a misspell. So I've done the Arabic thing of hodl on the t-shirt, and this is associated with Bitcoin. And the one thing that people, Bitcoin doesn't care what you think, right? And technology, and Alexander, technology doesn't care, right? And there were people, if you go back to electricity, and then the phone, and then TV, and then the internet. Computers, of course, helped all of that. And now cryptocurrency. At every stage, there were people who said, this is definitely going to fail. With cars, it was people who sold horses. With the internet, it was people who sold phone lines. And now with cryptocurrency, let's say specifically Bitcoin as the leader, it's people who have the traditional money in their pockets,
their investment products and various things, and we've seen them jump onto the ship, right, with the ETFs and what's happening. So they've kind of started to incorporate crypto into their product portfolios. So
absolutely,
and that's great. And what you said about language is so important that when I'm onboarding people, the first thing I do, I give them a list of acronyms, because I find that when people join a company or join the team, they join a meeting and I just see their eyes go cloudy when the people inevitably use acronyms and words. So the first thing I do, I say, here's a list of acronyms and any other new words that you don't know what they are, just, make sure that you write it down, and then we get to cover it, because otherwise you're going to miss half the conversation. You're not going to be part of the conversation, right? And which leads to the next question that I wanted to discuss with you, and this is something that's really interesting, and being part of a Web3 project myself, community, and how important the community is, and how we're sensitive to the community, and sometimes when they're not happy, what do we do? And when they're happy, what do we do? What's your view on building communities, and especially in this space? Have you had any run-ins with anyone? Have you?
So my traditional background, I studied being an engineer, but then I went straight into media, obviously. Media, you can see firsthand people become fans of a musician or a new type of music or a TV show or a new movie, right? Star Wars, I'll just throw one out there. Star Wars has an incredibly massive community, and they built it now over a 40, 50 year period to become what it is, with its different verticals or different offshoots. It is the same with anything. I think community building now they call it a trend, but if you go back again in history, community is as simple as your village. And then maybe within the village, there are those who like music and those who think music is bad. Okay, so that's one community, and the other one is another community. And some people are good at getting people together and then even convincing them to believe in something new. The beautiful thing about, we're here to talk about Web3. Web3 is an alternative, okay? And the whole concept of decentralization is a nice concept. But when you build communities that can control at least part of their assets, their fate, think of it in terms of I will go again back to very extreme basics, a farm. So if you can live away from a town and have what you need to eat and drink self-sufficient, that's a great community. And in the same way, I think in Web3, people want to build around their own, but you do need to actually communicate with other communities to survive. I don't think you can live in that kind of vacuum with technology being the driver.
It's really interesting, because the first word that popped into my head when you were saying that, first it was sustainable, self-sustaining, then off-grid, and then it's like, no, you can't do it, right? Not in Web3. And there are these and I thought of tribal, right? And how tribalistic we are in Web3, right? This blockchain is the best blockchain. This blockchain is the best blockchain. And in fact, we're starting to see that right now, the real solution to the biggest problem we have in blockchain is interoperability and tribalism. And some of us are working to remove that.
Yes.
And there are a couple of maxims that I kind of follow. Obviously, regulatory approval, we can leave if you want. We can talk about that later, because there's that libertarian movement that believes that there should be no regulations, right? It should be the Wild West. And those of us that are in the real world that want mass adoption, because it's not because we want to make money, it's because we believe that this is for the greater good, right?
Yes.
And I know you're aligned with that. But, this idea that one blockchain solves everything is really, really impossible. You go into a bank, you go into a company, you will find hundreds of softwares, and that's how we actually see blockchain, right?
Yes.
Those of us that are trying to resolve that issue, multiple blockchains connected together, federated blockchains, and then this idea of data privacy. When I was working in digital transformation as a consultant, the biggest challenge was I don't want my private data out on the public blockchain.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You can layer private and public blockchains. So you can have your private data on the private blockchain and still get the decentralization, the security from the public blockchain.
Yeah.
And this is happening now. And then there's movements, like DPIN right now. DPIN is like the AI of blockchain right now, in terms of it's the next, it's the next big thing, it's the trend. People are talking about it, even though it's just been given an acronym, even though we knew about it. Mesh networks and peer-to-peer networks always existed in our discussions. But right now, there's a focus on that. Do you spend any time on gaming, on peer-to-peer networks in your
Day to day.
your day to day, or do you think about it? I know that, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell us about what you do, right? So you're an educator. You train companies, you train businesses, you train communities.
I onboard. I mean, I feel like it's a duty to onboard friends to actually know that there's an alternative. And
but I want to give you the opportunity to talk about your business. What do you do? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely. So I like the fact that you used a few acronyms in that sentence. And the thing that, again, you'll find is you go into a room and most people won't say that they don't know what that thing is. So, for example, you said DPIN. What does that mean? This is where I start, and I'd say the first thing that happened is my curiosity about Bitcoin was to do with how can I pay somebody money across borders, right? I think it is actually, I'll say it straight up, it is a scam that if I want to send money from here to another country, that the poorer I am, right? So I'm talking about workers who want to send $10 remittances, get $1 or $2 or $3 taken from that by the time it reaches mom, right? And if you think about that, so for me it's e-commerce, right? It's I want to send money, and I started looking as to how can I keep as much as my money as possible. But as soon as you start going across borders and within certain jurisdictions, everybody wants a cut, right? And of course, the idea of Bitcoin, for me, when I heard about it, I went and asked a friend and I said, what is all this about? Because he had launched a couple of products. I'll do a shout out to Tariq Kaddoumi. He had launched, and he was in the newspapers locally. One was you could top up your mobile phone with credit using Bitcoin. And the mobile phone top up thing went to 160 providers. It's just through going online. And the second one was an ATM where you could put 100 dirham in and you could get Bitcoin onto your phone. There was a little system that lasted less than 24 hours because they did it for a company, but the company didn't have a license. And this is all the way back in about 2014. My curiosity was, what's this way that I can actually transfer money? And then he told me the price at that time. And I thought there's no way that I'm going to buy a $300 Bitcoin. I was like, it was $10 last year. It's like, what are you talking about? This is a scam. So I ignored it until it went up to 1,000 and then 1,500. And that's how far back.
We're talking about a $300,000. Kawasaki today was saying that Bitcoin is going to go to $350,000, not because of Bitcoin, but because of how governments manage their currencies. And their financial health. So
this is excellent. I mean, that's exactly the point I was going to come to, which is, so I was forced to, when I started looking into Bitcoin, I then started looking into money. And like Michael Saylor has just said it, and I'll quote him verbatim, which is you spend 40,000 hours of your life working for money on average, 40,000 hours. And people don't spend 10 hours. He's saying, spend 100 hours learning about money. Like, where does it come from? And why does the dollar being the dominant currency mean that every year you're going to have 10% less by default because of how much money they're printing? And exactly what you're saying. So the fact is, somebody sat there and said, okay, there must be an alternative, and they figured it out, and it's a group thing. And, the one thing is, people who talk against these things simply have read a headline. And the headline is written by the same people who are actually dependent on you having a bank account and depending on the dollar.
It's really important for us to encourage people to question things, challenge things, and understand, right? We talk about words and meaning, but really we encourage people to ask questions. But a lot of people that I talk to never ask questions. They're too shy, or they won't, and they'll invest or they'll buy something and they won't really know the details. Nobody reads the fine print.
Yeah.
Nobody reads
and of course, the very natural human instinct is to see something going up and to jump in. And if we go to property, and I even wrote an article for the Entrepreneur magazine in the height of the NFT craze in 2021 to say in 2008 in Dubai, I made a lot of money on one apartment and I actually bought a plot of sand for $20,000. Like nothing. I got nothing for that. When I drove to it, it was still the same sand with a sign in front. And the point about that is you start thinking, and this is the point, you start thinking that you're smart. And this is the worst thing when things are going up. This is the time, and this is where I really like what you've done in the past couple of years, which is you believe in this new technology, and this is what it is. It's a new technology that's going to allow for different things to happen. Some are going to work and some are not going to work. But at least you're in the right area. I'll use a fancy word and then take your question. There's something called the Cantillon effect, and the Cantillon effect was a phrase by a Frenchman. Let's call him Robert, but his surname is Cantillon. Okay. And the Cantillon effect is very, very simple. Is the closer you're working to the source of money, the more likely you are to make more money. So if you work for a bank, you're going to make more money than if you work all the way down the line, selling chewing gum. That Cantillon effect for us, just as people working, the more you know about what your money is and where it's coming from, the better it is for you in the long term. So spend some time learning.
So let me challenge that for a second. Is it because you're more educated, or is it because because here we are, we're saying that the system is a bit rigged, right? Inflation, the way it's managed, the way banks, we talk about the crisis 2008 and what happened and all these products that were invented, right, that had no real value. You talked about real estate and how, speculation, buying something, nothing was built and so forth. So is the Cantillon effect saying the closer you are, the more you understand, or is it the closer
the more you're likely to make more money?
You're on the inside. You're on the inside.
The closer you are to the inside, to the source. Okay, I'll use a river as an example, or the source of a river. The closer you go to the source of the river, the more vegetation there is.
I like it. I like learning new words. I like French, but I'm struggling with one part of what he's saying, and maybe we can clarify it. A lot of money is made because people are on the inside, right? They have the inside lead. They get to do it in the beginning, and then they get something early on, right? And this is what drives the greed, and this is what drives the speculation, right? And I think we need to be careful in the messages that we share, because we are kind of insiders in certain cases, right? And we don't want people to think that just because you didn't get in early, it's too late. Isn't that what Saylor says? He says that the best time to buy Bitcoin is now.
Yes, and right? You get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. Everybody gets Bitcoin at the price. But Bitcoin isn't... I have a much more important point, which is, number one, you can get in, right? And you can get in for $10. You can get in for very, very small amounts. But that isn't the point. The much more important point is, why do people choose to get into Bitcoin? And that is because you are being told something and it is an incomplete picture of, for example, the word inflation. The word inflation is a scary word. Anybody you ask about inflation that is just, hasn't studied it as well as economists, thinks inflation is like winter. It comes. It doesn't just come. Inflation is something that's created, and then it's actually... I love, there's a guy called Robert Breedlove. It's theft. It is literally a pyramid scheme. And I say this not because now people are going to run out and be in the streets. I'll be very honest, not that many people are going to listen to you or me or to Michael Saylor, because we're working against a massive media empire that's global that isn't going to pick this narrative up because they don't want people taking all their money out. So then it comes to banking. Fractional reserve banking. What is fractional reserve banking? It's creating money out of thin air, and these things are all things that are, it's information that's out there, but the danger is twofold. One, people don't care. People literally care about their week. What are they going to do by the weekend? But my invitation is to actually start thinking, okay, but how many weekends in your life do you have? Take 10 of them out and actually learn a bit about this money and how you can preserve some of it.
I love this. And you know that we're educators in my family. And my favorite book about money is The Richest Man in Babylon. Right? Because it's very simple. It's a very old story that talks about saving 10%, save 10%. So if we were better at teaching people to save, we would, and it goes against what some economies are doing because they're trying to make you spend, right? And then you can bring in the whole CBDC and all that, and it becomes a big mess. And I think saving is one, right? Understanding you have to save, and then that your savings will lose value every year because of inflation.
If they're in cash.
If they're in cash or even in other assets, right, that return less than the inflation rate, right? So it's a fight, it's a race against time, right, to secure your savings so that they're worth something when you may need them, right, for emergencies or future retirement and so forth. So there's definitely a need to educate people about money, right? And the way we use money and technology. If you look at credit cards and what credit cards did to savings, it obliterated savings because people pay huge amounts of interest rates, right, without even knowing. So they'll sign up for a card. The card could be at 4% interest rate per month. So they're paying 48% on the amount that they owe the credit card. And, nobody does anything about it. Nobody.
Yeah, because they're interested in the instant gratification. So look, I am saying that it's not about being a winning or a losing side or a winning or a losing battle. We're dealing with human emotions. Human emotions are very simple. I want. So listen, there's a brilliant saying. It's simple, but you have to think about it. So you need to focus on wanting what you have, not having what you want. So you today have a house and you have a car and you have a loving family. Focus on that. Don't think of the car you don't have and the house you don't have. And so focus on the stuff you have. However, now the second part, you say saving, and this is the nuance. You've been encouraged to do saving. I'm going to call you out on this. You're quoting something that we've all grown up with. The bank wants you to save because when you put your money in the bank and leave it there, they can print 10 times the amount by giving out. This is what fractional reserve banking is. They give 10 other people the amount you've left. You put $1,000 in the bank, they can give out $10,000. It's not money.
Yeah.
It is just that's the right that they have.
That's the mechanism of fractional reserve banking. And you know what's scary? And I don't know if this is true, but they're doing the same with Bitcoin.
Okay. But some entities are taking Bitcoin, but they're not claiming
to have one-to-one. Where if you invest, in certain companies are investing in Bitcoin, but they're not really holding one Bitcoin for your Bitcoin. And this is something to be verified, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really important. We always say not your
keys,
not your coins, right? So
I again, this is exactly the kind of stuff. So you start there and people run away, right? So let's go back to you're saying what I do. I've been lucky that I started by telling, first of all, my friend who I mentioned, he was asked by a few companies because he was in the newspaper to come in and give them workshops. And he knows that I'm very good at explaining technical things. He said, work with me on the presentation. I said, take me with you. So this is 2014, 2015. We'd go into Ernst & Young, NBD, a bank here in Dubai, and talk to their staff. And the first thing is we have to go back to first principles, which is what is money? And staff in the finance departments of big companies don't know what money is. They know they have it and they know they can make it, but they don't know what it is. So then fast forward to where we are today. I've helped more than one friend. I don't say put all your money in something. I'm saying discover with a little money what this thing is. And then they've told friends, and we've created workshops around that. And I've done educational stuff on video and I put it out online.
And a lot of it in Arabic.
English and Arabic, like equal. The more I was on Forbes, I did 8 episodes for Forbes, which is just not Bitcoin, but crypto basics for executives. And it was with Twitter, and that was watched by millions. But yes, that's the reason Arabic seems like it's much bigger. But the point again, as you always think, avoid the technical terms and start telling people like, what's in your pocket is invented. I love this concept. You're talking about incredibly complex inventions today. So Apex Fusion is a very good example. They're trying to use a new technology and actually create 3 different parts that can work together, because at the moment, these 3 different parts are working completely separately. Okay, that's an example. Very simplified language. But if you go back to the very basic thing of extremely complex technology, is still, you have to be able to explain it.
It's key. And a shout out to a guest we had here who is founding a company called Umla. And Giovanna was on the podcast, and she described basically being an ex-TikToker. Like, not TikToker, she worked for TikTok, that she's customer obsessed. So she's creating an exchange for moms and pops and grandparents to be able to dollar cost average and invest in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. So I'm sure you'd love it. So shout out to her. And by the way, I did meet Michael Saylor, but he wasn't a Bitcoiner yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in
Miami, I'm sure.
In Miami. And the reason I mention his name is my favorite interview that he's done in recent times that I keep sharing with people is the one he did with Tucker Carlson.
Okay.
Because he's really good at assessing his host, and he explained it in a way that made sense to Tucker Carlson's
audience.
Fan base.
Yeah, mom and pops.
Yeah. And I've used that and shared it quite a bit, and I recommend users who don't understand Bitcoin to watch it. It's really, really and we'll put the link in the we'll put the link. So from a technology standpoint, those of us, so you're on the, let's say, educational side and explaining things. I'm more on the technology side, and some of our viewers are startups and people building. What can we do better? Do you know? Do you have a view of that?
You say, so the educational side is something that is more public, and that's something I have a website, metcalf.com, METKAF. And the thing that I do, however, and I'm still a business person, I still work in normal businesses that need to sell something to consumers, right? So I say this because the first thing I look at is very basic businesses. I've invested in normal businesses, right? And one will succeed and another one will fail. And the reason I say this is you need to be not just solving a problem, but actually solving a problem that people want a solution for, right? Everybody loves to quote people like Steve Jobs and then Elon Musk. These are 1 in 8 billion, right? And it's not going to be you. At the end of the day, I love the idea of, for example, Umla, something that is very simple. I hope it works as a concept and she can get the regulation right, the right channels, because banks are, your money is in a bank. How's it going to go from a bank to this thing? I don't know. I'll find out. But the point I want to make to businesses that are more complex, at the highest level, people are interested in, so what's your business model, right? And a lot of, in terms of crypto, let's say there's something called liquidity. And liquidity is simply making money available so 2 sides can trade, right? So if there's no liquidity, one side is going to have money. And let's give the Iraqi dinar as a random example. Nothing against Iraq or their dinar. But if one side has an Iraqi dinar and the other side doesn't want it, somebody in the middle could actually provide, let's say, the dollar and have that exchange happen. But if that middleman doesn't exist, then they can't. So why am I mentioning this? Because a lot of this, you mentioned liquidity, a lot of liquidity pools exist for the sole purpose of people on both sides making money, but they're actually not adding any value to anyone. So it's not like they're increasing security on a network.
Oh, it's actually a risk sometimes.
It is a risk. And I'd love to talk about security in a moment.
That's what Apex Fusion is actually resolving.
It's trying to resolve the security equation.
It's not so much the security, it's the liquidity problem. So when you try to connect 2 blockchains, right, with a bridge, you need liquidity pairs, right? You need trading pairs so that you can wrap.
You need the equivalent of a dollar that both sides will accept.
You can wrap a currency, a token, and then move it to the other side.
Yeah.
But in some cases you can never come back because there might not be enough liquidity on the other side, right? So it's like you can take a boat to cross the river, but there's no boats coming back. And the whole point of connecting communities is to build that mass adoption. And Apex Fusion is taking a very different approach. And I look forward to talking to you more about it when we sit down. But basically, what it's doing is it's saying, if you are in this community, come to us. You can come in and use Apex as a token, and you can interact with both sides of the UTXO community and the EVM community. UTXO does things better, cheaper than the EVM side. The EVM side does smart contracts in a much more simple way. How about connecting the two, bringing them in, creating a space where they can come and interact with liquidity?
Yes.
Because it's one token. So, and there's more things happening, and Apex Fusion is definitely something that I'm very excited about because that's what I do as a full-time job.
What kind of companies would use Apex Fusion's solutions?
I was in a workshop recently where our one of our top gurus who's helped build Polygon and Cosmos, and I mean, this is somebody who's an OG in that space, described how literally you could use Apex to help a central bank manage their central CBDC, right? Which is a bit controversial. But if you think about it, you have a private network. So you could have a completely private network running your nodes for the CBDC and then use one of Apex's blockchains to decentralize it and secure it. And you could control the bridge one way so that you can still control the liquidity of your currency. So there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of use cases to be developed where we're not, we're still at the very beginning. I like to say we're at the Stone Age.
Okay.
Where somebody's figured out how to roll a boulder with 2 guys instead of 20 guys. But the wheel, the bicycle, the engine, the turbine haven't been invented yet. But we know in technology that the learning curve is very steep, so you get massive acceleration.
Absolutely. And now with AI,
so
for example,
a lot of the things
programming
so
is
the
much
point
faster.
of this, first of all, saying it to people, saying it's still early, get in, don't, you're not too late. That's one. The other message is, so those of us who are building and who are creating these and investing time to research and develop some of these products, we're doing it not really sure what's going to come out on the other side. We just know we need to work and we need to invest time in it. Otherwise, we're just going to be behind. We're going to be left behind and going to be doing things in a clunky, expensive, inefficient way.
And look, I'll use again, this is an encouragement for anybody to get involved. The internet, 1990. And in 2000, a big crash happened and companies went bust, in 2000. And all the headlines, again, traditional media, the internet's a joke, it's a farce, it's not going to help anybody with anything. Facebook was created in 2005, so 15 years after. We're 15 years into the idea of Bitcoin and crypto in general, right? And I'm saying this because today, as we're sitting, some of the companies around us are going to be the next Google, Yahoo, but then add to this Netflix, Uber. All of these are companies that were created where the internet was prevalent. Everybody had one. Now you're building these companies. We're talking about companies where this ability for everybody to have a mobile phone, so it's a computer in your hand and it's information, this, and you're building companies that will, once there's adoption, think of how fast WhatsApp is just an app. Everybody found a very good use for it very quickly, so everybody used it. And TikTok was one of the fastest, and I'm not sure how many people listening use ChatGPT on a daily basis, but it's the fastest technology to ever have adoption.
100 million in a month.
100. So my point is, within all of this, get in today, because there still isn't a chat of whether it's money or security. So exactly what you just said, I'm now a big fan. So you were asking me, what do I do, right? I work with companies that are, let's say, Web3 companies that are ignoring just very basic traditional business models. It's like, why are you doing it this way? Why are you overcomplicating something? So you want adoption. So you mentioned community. If you want community, talk to people like a human being, right? Don't talk like through your memes and through your emojis and all of this. Great, you'll get your 10,000 to 100,000 young people, but you're not going to get millions through emojis. What they want to know is they want a face and a person they can trust, saying something they can understand. I mean, this is actually so strong that you can build a very fake reality. And I say this because politicians, right, in the West, they will lie, no more taxes, famous no more taxes. And then, of course, the first thing, every politician says no more taxes. The first thing they do is they increase taxes.
Tax relief.
But that's because we know of, again, we use America because it's easy, but how many actors became presidents? Because an actor is somebody who can act trustworthy, and people feel like they know that person and familiar. Now there's talk of The Rock becoming a president, and maybe Will Smith. All of this, you might find funny, but why am I saying this? You just get one use case, and you get it pushed by a popular face, somebody you can trust, and then suddenly you will regret not having learned the basics. However, then it becomes the reality, your norm. It won't be too late. My question to everybody is, when did you get into Facebook? When did you get into email, right? And in the same way, these things are coming. You're just either ignoring it or you're going to be one of the late comers. But it is going to be a practical thing that you're going to use every day.
I think if I was to sum it up, is how can technology help you in your life to safeguard the most precious resource we have, which is time. And speaking of time, we've gone a little bit over, but it was a pleasure, Jamil. I look forward to the next time. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Amazing. I hope to share. Thank you so much for having me and doing this. I really think you asked me a question at the beginning, which is community. Every person who's visiting you in the studio is going to be part of a community. And this is how you do it, literally one by one at the beginning. So best of luck.
Thank you so much.